So up to this point, we've talked about the macro level, like what an organization looks like, open communication, fostering psychological safety. And now we're going to look at the conversation level, the interpersonal level, which is where a lot of our miscommunications actually come up, right? So we're going to look at the actual anatomy of a conversation. So I got a fun fact for you. Maybe you know this. Did you know that your brain receives 2 million bits of data every second? So 2 million, 4 million, 6 million. But right now, it can only process 134 bits every second. So you are missing out on a lot of information. Your brain is working hard to try to process as much as possible. Also, on average, a person has 6,000 thoughts in a day. So while you are inundated with data and trying to process all of it, you're also thinking a bunch of thoughts, right? So my question to you as a group, are you aware of how much you're actually missing? This is important as we look at conversations, because we have to be present and focused in every conversation to get the most out of it. All right. So the actual anatomy of a conversation, we're going to dissect it. Look at this part. Two people are having a conversation. We got a speaker and we got a listener. And what we think is happening with our conversations is the speaker is talking, like I'm up here talking, telling you all these things, and you're taking in everything, right? You know everything that my heart, my mind, and is trying to portray to you. Like we're on the same page 100%. But that's not actually what happens. I wish it did, but it doesn't. What happens is, at our absolute best, you're only getting 60% of what the person is saying, of what I'm saying. That's why I know at the end of this workshop, I'm hoping that you will at least take away one key point. Okay, so this is why we need to, as speakers and listeners, be clear with what we're saying and hearing, be genuine, not filtering what we're saying, being conscientious of what we're engaging in, all while being aware of our biases and judgments and avoiding assumptions as much as possible. Because all of this we naturally do in our conversations. So how can we build our conversations and avoid barriers that lead to conflict? We're going to talk about some examples. Start off with builders. Builders are, again, ways that we can engage and encourage conversation. They are going to look like being curious about the other person. And just having curiosity when you go into any conversation is going to make a huge difference, especially with people you don't want to talk to. How many times have you got to have somebody come up to you that you just know, oh gosh, this is going to be like the longest conversation ever, right? You're like, cringe. But you still have to have a conversation with them. So I would challenge you the next time you go into a conversation with that person to go in with curiosity. It will shift how you approach it. Also, I'm sorry, I apologize. They're not supposed to be like this. That says commonalities. So finding commonalities and similarities with the other person so you can relate to what they're saying and stay engaged. Active listening and nonverbal cues. These are two things that we're going to work at with the next section of this workshop. Active listening, these are techniques. Asking questions, mirroring, and paraphrasing. Is anybody familiar with active listening techniques? A little bit? Good. Okay. Super awesome and great way to, great thing to keep practicing. And also nonverbal cues, we'll cover that as well. That's posture, eye contact, tone, inflections, right? So all of these are great things that we can do to encourage healthy dialogue, as opposed to barriers, which again lead to miscommunications. These are things that look like judging. This is stuff that we commonly hear and maybe even do. So criticizing, blaming, what is that? Well, somebody tells you something that they're really excited about, an idea that they have, and all of the response is, yeah, I don't think that's a good idea, right? That shuts things down pretty quick. Or, I'm late. It's not my fault, but there was too many people on the road. Blaming somebody else shuts down the conversation as well. The next, and these should all sound somewhat familiar, I would imagine. Sending solutions. This is means a lot of people have good intentions when they send solutions, but it actually shuts down the conversation. I'll explain why. This can show up like ordering and advising. So as the person is talking through a problem that they're having, and the listener's response then is, well, actually, I think that you need to do this. Or advising, this is really what you need to be doing for this situation. It shuts down the conversation because it's not actually allowing the speaker to process through their own thoughts and get to their own conclusion. And it also inadvertently tells somebody that you don't think that they can get to their own solution themselves. The last one is avoiding. Super common to avoid things, especially when we don't want to deal with the conversation. Diverting is what we do when we co-opt the conversation. My friend Amy just came back from vacation from Maui, I don't know, and I'm like, my response to her is, well, I just went there a year ago and it was amazing. Let me tell you all about it, right? You just completely diverted the conversation to yourself. Or logical argument. We do this a lot when we don't align with the emotional conversation that's happening. If somebody's very emotional and you offer them a logical argument, it's shutting down the conversation. I'll give you an example. Somebody just recently broke up with their partner, spouse, whoever. And what is a common response that people get in a situation like this? You'll be fine. There's plenty of fish in the sea, right? Nobody really wants to hear that. Okay, so these three barriers, these are categories that are very common in our conversations. That's why I included them today. But there's actually many more categories of miscommunications that we do inadvertently. And we talk about all this stuff in longer workshops, but I wanted to give you an idea of what it looks like. Any questions? It's kind of familiar, right? Yeah. So these barriers are going to definitely lead to miscommunications and potentially conflict. So if we know how to identify them, we can avoid them in the future and reduce our conflict. We talked about a lot. What kind of questions do you have up to this point? Sure. Yeah. This one? Oh, I got to click through. Hold on. That one? Okay. Mm-hmm. Does this one make sense? Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The 60%? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we have a lot going on. And I addressed that, I was trying to allude to that in the previous, we've got a lot going on in our head. We're processing a lot of data. We've got tons of thoughts running right now. You're all thinking probably 5 thoughts as you're listening to me. There's a lot of competition for your attention and your focus. And we need to know that as we go into our conversations, because we know we're missing a bunch of stuff that we're not even aware of we're missing. So the 60% is actually what we're getting from the conversation when we're absolutely focused and present and using active listening skills and all the good stuff. That's the best we can do. So if that's the best we can do, we're going to try to get to that as much as possible. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for asking that question, because I did kind of go through that pretty fast. Okay.
How would you identify your own biases?
Oh, well, that's a great question. Oftentimes we can do that by looking at other people, and when we react to another person through judgments, things we don't like about them, that can be an indication to look at ourselves and go, was that a bias of mine? Where did that come from? So really questioning your own thoughts around another person can be a way of self-discovery. Does that answer your question? That's one way. Yeah.